Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion, it's not a straightforward review, it's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening. Hey, this is Lisa, and you can catch me on Twitter at ILTM Podcast. I'm also on Instagram at I Love That Movie Podcast, and we have a Patreon. The show is always free, but if you want to support us on there, you can, and that's at patreon.com/ I Love That Movie. If you do sign up, you get a weekly bonus episode that has interviews and also a lot of current stuff that we're covering. And I'd like to take a moment. I'd like to take a moment to thank our top patrons. They are Chris Balga, Jeff Whitman, Philip Barker, Michael Cross. Also, I have a new person that I want to give a shout out to. Cody House just signed up and want to say hi, Cody. Thank you for joining. And yeah, if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and rate the show. It does help new listeners find us. And I want to introduce a recurring guest that I've had on here. Say hi to Chris Balga.
Hey, Lisa, how you doing?
Doing well. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself in case people haven't heard your name before?
Yeah, my name is Chris Balga. I'm assistant principal here in North Carolina, but I have two podcasts I'm on. One is called World's Finest True Believers, where a guest comes on and selects a graphic novel or comic book arc from any genre. We do a deep dive into the history of the creation, the showrunners, and the guest favorite parts. Since I've been on the show, I always say, give credit where credit is due. This show was definitely the big inspiration for my show. So, and then the other show I co-host with my friend Brent is Marvel Alliance, where we dive in. It's a weekly show where we dive into everything going on in the world of Marvel, whether it be TV, streaming, movies, and comics at that point. And both those shows are on the Geek Ultimate Alliance network.
Yes, thank you so much for the kind words. And, obviously your podcast is a big inspiration to me as well. So,
Ah, thank you.
um, so my guest always picks the movie. You've been on here a few times. I don't think we've talked Bond yet, though. Kind of
No,
giving a
yeah,
spoiler
this.
there. But what movie did you choose to talk about today?
Yep, it is a James Bond movie. It's probably it ranks not if it may be my top favorite Bond, but definitely of the Daniel Craig era, my favorite Bond from 2012, Skyfall.
Yes. And I don't know. I think I agree with you on rewatch. Okay. So I saw, when we thought Bond was coming out a while back. I mean, we've
Mhm.
thought this like 10 times, but one of the
But it
last
finally did. It finally
it
did.
finally came out. With one of the times I watched Casino Royale again.
Hmm.
And I really liked it, right? I love that.
Yeah.
I've always thought of that as my favorite. But I don't know if it's because it's the oldest one out of these. It aged a little bit for me.
Hmm.
Whereas Skyfall, I, rewatched this and I was like, man, I forgot how perfect this is. So I think it might be my favorite. I might have to switch over to Skyfall.
And I think for a lot of people, it alters back and forth. I
Yeah,
mean, No Time Today came out. I know that's starting to be in a conversation for some people's top without getting into
sure.
spoilers with it. But I think until that movie, it seemed to alter between Skyfall and Casino Royale for a lot of people. And I mean, I can't argue with people who put Skyfall at 2 and Casino Royale at 1. It's Skyfall just hit. I have probably seen that out of most of the Craig. Probably rewatching it was probably my 10th time rewatching it.
Wow. Well,
Um,
yeah, it's really good. It's just jam-packed with stuff. I mean, it's like that's what I was thinking watching it this time, like so much happens in this one movie.
yeah, and especially, and again, if you like it, great. I know we don't dog on movies, but coming from Casino Royale, New Bond to what I consider the low point of Craig's era, the Quantum of Solace, to
Agreed.
then really knocking it out of the park with Skyfall. I mean, talk about, okay, we know we didn't do the best we could with Quantum of Solace, but wait till you see Skyfall. Man, whoo, so much good about this movie.
I know. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with the director too. This
Hmm.
was directed by Sam Mendes. I know I'm going a little out of order here, but
I'll go for it. Your show. You can do what you
I
want.
can do whatever I want. But watching it this time, especially the scenes towards the end reminded me a lot of the towards the end of this movie there are scenes that really do remind me a lot of 1917 with like the color palette
Hmm.
and the running. I don't know, there's just something about it, and I'll kind of touch on it more when we get there, but I do think him being such a good director, had a pretty big impact on this film.
Oh yeah, and it definitely was probably a big reason they wanted him to come back
Mhm.
for Spectre too. So.
Yes, and, I also think that it's a very, like, artistic film for a Bond film,
Hmm.
it's got a lot of choices
And it
aesthetically.
re and it really deals with, I mean, you saw that a lot in Casino Royale and a little bit with Quantum of Solace, but this one really deals probably the most personal
Yes.
depth we have gone into Bond in his past.
Uh-huh, yeah, which can be polarizing. I remember I had
Mhm.
friends that I saw it with, and they were like, "That was bad," and I was like, "What? Did I see a different movie?" And I think
Yeah,
over
I
time
say
it
that a lot of times with sometimes with news. I hated
True.
this. Okay, you missed the assignment on that one.
Yeah, and, like, sometimes over time, people I think it was just very different, kind of
Mhm,
like Casino Royale. It's just different because it does go really deep, and we learn a lot about him, and, he's an international man of mystery, maybe, like Austin Powers. But it's like we kind of almost want him to stay mysterious, and so they
mhm.
made a choice here by not doing that, and I think it paid off, but I could see how that could be a little polarizing for some
Yeah, I
fans.
mean, it's their opinion at that point. I can kindly disagree, but again, that's what makes these fun discussions have. People have different opinions on it.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to go ahead and read a synopsis of this, a quick summary. If you haven't seen Skyfall, why? Why haven't you seen? No, but if you haven't seen
That's your homework.
it, yeah, log off immediately and see it, or close your phone. But if you are still here, we do not do spoiler-free discussions, so I would definitely see it first. But without further ado, here's the summary. When James Bond's latest assignment goes terribly wrong, it leads to a calamitous turn of events. Undercover agents around the world are exposed, MI6 is attacked, forcing M to relocate the agency. And with MI6 now compromised inside and out, M turns to the one man she can trust, Bond. Aided by a field agent, Bond takes to the shadows and follows a trail to Silva, a man from M's past who wants to settle an old score.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
like that
it.
summary. That was a good one.
Yeah,
IMDb.
it gives a good setup at that point. But yeah, this is. I mean, we kind of did it offline. I'll say it now. Upon kind of reading a little bit more about it and then watching it this time, I was like, man, this is the only Bond movie in the Craig era that has no direct connections to the previous two, nor
Mhm.
will be referenced in the last two.
Yeah.
And knowing that even more going into this, I said, man, it is a true standalone movie in the sense of the past and what's the future coming.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Because
couldn't remember till I watched it
Silva's not
again.
connected. Silva's not connected to what becomes known as Spectre.
Yeah, because 'cause we're gonna shift to his, "brother" in quotes,
Hmm.
and a new love interest, and yeah, it's just completely different from what we get in this movie. I have a couple of quick facts I wanted to
Hmm.
share. The first one's one of my favorites just because I love Judi Dench.
Mm.
So Dame Judi Dench has more screen time in this movie than Desmond Llewellyn had in his 17 movies as Q, making her portrayal of M the most recurrent character in the franchise, after Bond as measured by screen time. Now that
Hey,
may
you
have
know,
changed after that, but for that
but
from that point.
more Judy Dench on screen. That's not a bad thing at all.
Exactly, exactly. It's also the most successful James Bond movie at the international box office in the official film's franchise history. Again, probably up until this point, but
Hmm.
it may keep that title since I don't think No Time to Die did as well because of the pandemic and stuff. Adele's Skyfall is the first Billboard Top 10 to win the Academy Award for Best Original Score since Eminem's Lose Yourself in
and,
2002.
and the only Bond theme song to ever win an Academy Award. Others have been
Really?
nominated. Yeah, it was others had been nominated. Obviously, which one was it? You've got Paul. I'm trying to pull up my list right here because
Oh,
I
yeah,
had it
go for
written
it.
down. Although Bond songs have been nominated for best song, that would be "Live and Let Die." So Sir Paul McCartney, obviously, "For Your
Yeah.
Eyes Only," "The Spy Who Loved Me," and "The Unofficial Casino Royale" in 1967. Yeah, this is the first James Bond to win the Academy Award. With that, she was pregnant at the time, and the
Oh, wow.
way she talked about the way the pregnant her pregnancy kind of affect obviously hormones caused her voice to go deeper, and which is why her singing tone in the song is so low, and she has never been able to replicate that tone ever again.
So
So it's
interesting.
and even the song Skyfall, I go back and forth between Adele Skyfall and Chris Cornell's
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
You Know My Name,
Mhm.
two very different songs. But if I were to pick like the more typical Bond, and I say typical in the sense of kind of what you expect out of a Bond song, the beats and everything, like Adele's kind of wins out for me. And I've been kind of jamming out to that song since I've watched the movie. I said, man, I think this might slightly beat out Chris Cornell for me as one of my favorites.
I think it does for me too, and, that surprises me. Like, that's not but it's like it's so good. It just feels so
Hmm.
Bond, but it's so epic, and it really captures the tone of the film, which is, like, surprisingly somber.
Hmm.
Just everything about that. I like that song. I like the one by, what's the artist's name? Sam something.
Oh, Sam Smith.
Sam Smith, yeah, that's right. I like his as well, and I actually love the Billie Eilish one too. I love Bond themes, I think. So, I'm an easy sell
Yeah,
there, but those are some of my favorites. But this one, it's the second I just see the name, the song plays in my head. So,
yeah, and they work in like you usually hear from Bond movies, like they work in the elements of Bond's theme
true,
into the
true,
song, and they
true.
do a great job with it in this in her song.
Yeah, and that intro, oh yeah, just so great.
Hmm.
Another thing I love, we kind of talked about Sam Mendes a little bit, so kind of wanted to talk about the cast too, because I
Yeah,
really love the cast of this film. Obviously Daniel Craig, we've talked about him a few times on the show.
little up and
Um,
comer at the time.
yeah, brand new to the scene. Yet another Bond film where he said it would be his last, and it was
Hmm.
not. But absolutely love the way he portrays the character with just so much. I mean, he seems so tough, but I think they said at the point of this movie, it was like only the second time he'd ever cried in any of the Bond films.
Yeah, something to that effect, and I think the only other time was, oh, geez, people are gonna be shouting at the shouting at the screen
Oh
at that
gosh.
point. Um, it it's and I'm a big Bond fan, and I'm feeling bad, I'm forgetting this, I wanna say
I think it was one of the Connery ones, I think.
Her Majesty's Secret
Oh, okay.
Service, I think it's Roger Moore, and I wanna say it's when the only time when he was married at that point
Oh,
in his
okay.
and spoiler alert, she dies,
Oh,
and she's
I'm
killed.
shocked.
So, um,
So he was allowed
so
to cry that one time because his wife
yeah,
died.
that's the other time. Yeah, I know our buddy Scott's yelling at me right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's saying you should know this.
Well, I love his portrayal. I love Ben Wishaw's Q. Judy Dench, we've already talked about as M. Ray Fiennes as Gareth Mallory.
Yeah, his his introduction into the Bond franchise, and you almost say, why hasn't he ever been involved in Bond?
He just seems like he should be, yeah, and,
Hmm.
like, when he, spoiler, transitions to M at the end, it's like it just felt like a really good torch pass,
Yeah.
it felt very natural. I love Javier Bardem's take on this villain. It's so freaking wacky,
Hmm.
um, but I like how over the top it is.
Oh, very eccentric. Like you expect a Bond villain to be,
Yeah.
but it it is very you can buy into. He has been seriously wronged by you know M and MI6 and just completely abandoned that he it what his how he got abandoned at that point kind of went a little nutso,
Oh,
and
yeah.
to some extent saying, I'm not saying his methods are correct, but you can kind of see it saying, okay, I can kind of understand why you're going down this path. I
I
don't like your
know.
methods, but I get it.
And at times, I think Bond almost agrees with him. I mean, he's wrestling the entire movie with how he feels about M and
Hmm.
MI6. He sees the flaws in that organization and their betrayals and how expendable they are, and I think he's sort of taken that for granted his whole career,
Hmm.
but now, Silva is really forcing him to come face to face with what that really means and if that's really fair and if that's something he's willing to do. Plus, they really shouldn't train people, you know, to become incredible murder masterminds or whatever assassins and then turn on them. That could always be a problem, you would think.
And they would answer back saying, "You signed up for this,
Yeah,
so
true, true,
it's
true.
kind it's kind of like the Mission Impossible series, like the secretary will just if you get caught or captured or killed, the secretary will disavow all knowledge of your existence. So you do
True.
sign up for this. So the fact that you're striking out, I'm sorry, this was your choice.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention Naomi Harris as Eve,
Ah, yes.
Moneypenny.
Hmm.
I didn't realize I forgot that this was the introduction to Moneypenny into this franchise.
And I do like that we get to see that she wasn't like, in all the Bond friends, she's just M's private
Right,
secretary at
right,
that
right.
point.
Yeah.
But to see that she's a field agent first brings a nice dynamic to it that, yeah,
Feels like she's more
you
qualified,
yeah,
like she
it's
could have been on the field, but then she chose to be behind a desk, which is fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that she worked personally with Bond before she chose to work directly with M.
Yeah, and I like that, they have sort of a steamy will they, won't they, but ultimately they don't that doesn't really
Oh, I
stick.
love that she basically puts him in his place.
Yeah, true, 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 very true. Um, well, do you wanna talk a little bit about some of your favorite scenes?
Yeah, definitely. The intro, it's very interesting in this fact that you are just put right into what's going on and
Yes.
what we quickly they don't over explain stuff. They just let you kind of figure out what's going on with it without basically, they're just telling you little bits and pieces. As an audience, maybe you have to say, "Oh, okay, obviously their agent said, oh, okay, they're looking, someone's captured something." Only start figuring out what these guys have actually taken,
Mhm.
and it's basically the list of all the deep cover MI6 agents throughout the world,
Yeah, yeah.
which harkens definitely back to the first Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah,
Get,
true.
getting the knock list out of there, saying, "Oh, they're copying this." It's not necessarily a unique idea, but it's one that is always at risk. You
Mhm.
know, getting that list out there and protecting those agents, but the Bond's always good for the chase sequences and how much bigger can you make the next chase sequence, going
Oh gosh,
from
yeah.
the going from the streets to on the train to basically Bond using a crane that ends up destroying like half the train, it's or at least part of the train cars, just like, and he comes off of it saying, "Hmm, it's it doesn't make it." In fact, him getting shot, that's you know you don't feel and see Bond getting shot too often at all in movies. I want to say
I
this is
said
like,
this was, like, the 2nd time ever, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and you see it in that opening. You see he's basically shot, and I kind of laughed myself. So, oh, we've got it, you're right. So it's kind of like the A Team. Everyone has bad aim, and Bond's invincible.
Right, right. It will and the way they build up him getting shot, you
Hmm.
know, Judi Dench's character is like, "Take the shot, take the shot." She's like, I could hit Bond," and she's like, "Do it." And then Moneypenny pulls that trigger and he's shot, and you're just no matter what was happening up to that point, you just didn't expect him to be shot.
Yeah, and it was a perfect call. It was a perfect decision to when that shot goes out, all the music cuts off. Like it's building and building and building. The soundtrack's building, building. When it's shot, like all the soundtrack stops at that moment, and you're just left hearing when Eve goes on and says "Agent down."
Yeah, and
A and
it was
you watch him fall, and at that moment when my wife's watching it, Aaron goes, "Oh, yeah, there's no way he survives that fall."
yeah. I mean, in real life, no.
Yeah.
Claiming that he's dead at that moment made sense.
Mhm.
But, when Judi Dench makes that call too, it's like, now we know something about M that we didn't know before, and it's that
Yeah.
he's expendable. I mean, I think we heard that all the time, we knew that that was a possibility, but you just don't expect her I think we've seen him being protected a lot up until this point, and then this happens, and, it's shocking, and it's shocking to James Bond. I mean,
Mhm.
it really sets the tone for the whole movie. He's very shaken by this betrayal, you know?
Yeah, and that's kinda like the theme of the film when we meet
Mhm.
Silva, like, he's Bond's abandoned, but you also don't see him seeking out revenge
No,
or
no,
anything like
no.
that. He basically is accepts saying, "Fine, they're not coming after me, I'm just gonna disappear,"
Yeah,
you
he's
know?
like, "Okay, that taught me something, but I'm just gonna move on." And,
Yeah.
you know
And to your point that maybe some people who have a different opinion of Bond's like, "No, Bond's gonna come back," and things like that. It's just again, this is a different Bond.
yeah. And
So
also that, when he does come back, he's so shaken, like his aim's off,
mhm.
he doesn't pass the psych eval, things like that. It's like we learn, that he's human in this one a lot
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
It's definitely even with this was, like, the longest stint in between the movies itself because there's a 4-year gap between the
Oh, yeah,
release
it's
of
true.
Quantum of Solace and this one, so it's, like, the 3rd longest gap in the period, but it's also one of those, we don't really know how we know kind of a little bit of time, but time kind of in between when Bond kind of is resurrected at that point
Mhm.
to then is interesting just because it ain't it be long. We're not talking years, but it's definitely possibly a month or two.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So I do like that this movie comes out for the 50th anniversary and how many different callbacks to some of the franchises other movies in the Bond franchise. You get the when James gave the scrap of metal pieces to the agent, he said, it's for her eyes only.
Oh,
Call
okay.
back to For
Yeah.
Her Eyes Only, the Aston Martin DB5,
Mhm.
the location that M asked for Bond was how old was he when his parents died was a reference to Goldfinger. The
Oh,
handprint recognition on the gun grips were reference to License to Kill. The scene where he breaks into M's house again from Casino Royale. So they do a lot of
yeah.
different little callbacks to it for the 50th, and it was cool to see this kind of movie make those very subtle references.
Yeah, without it being just, like, constant references.
Mhm.
It's not like it had to how sometimes a movie is so many callbacks that you're like, "All I'm watching are callbacks," but it's woven really well into the story.
Yeah, it's just very subtle at that point, but, like, we said, like, with this movie not referencing Mr. White or Vesper or the quantum organization that we would know as Spectre, it's just I didn't miss that. I didn't like, it wasn't one of those things like, "Oh, when are they gonna reference it?" It seemed organic saying, "Oh, okay, maybe we've moved on from that." You
Yeah.
know, it's not gonna be connected, but it was very interesting to see, okay, who has this list? Who's out there? Who is this person? Is it? Because I mean, until we meet who Silva is, we could think it's still this organization from the previous movies that we finally going to get, and it
I
ends up not being that at all.
I remember not trusting Ray Fiennes in the movie for a while.
Yeah.
I felt like he was a really good red herring. New guy, I'm not sure what his deal is, famous actor. I was kind of like, "Well, I don't know
hmm
about that guy." And I think they did a good job with that. Another, to me, really shocking fun scene is when MI6 explodes.
Yes, and especially kind of how it goes down, like using the viral video, like "Think on Your Sins,"
Yes, very Batman.
and
Batman
yeah,
villain.
and so she stopped outside of it, and I like how later on, like, saying, "Well, why didn't he just wait till M got there?" No, he wanted M to see the destruction, know that she cost lives.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
her decisions as running this organization have led to death at that point. He's gonna make her pay for the quote unquote sins her sins. And that was, like you said, that was very jarring just to see, because again, we think of our, especially in this film, like the organization should be invincible and can stand up to it, that it's directly attacked and they have to go underground. Like they literally are, one could say, oh, they're cowering, they're hiding underground, you know?
Yeah. I think too, there's in certain franchises, there's key things, like in Star Trek, we
Mhm.
always lose the Enterprise, or it seems
Yeah.
like in Batman, Wayne Manor burns down, like,
Mhm.
so to me, MI6 is kind of like that. It's like we don't expect it to happen. We don't want that place. It's sort of like a safe house. It's a safe place. It's where his headquarters. And when it explodes, we're like, oh my God, where do we go from here? So it's effective and it's used very well here.
And I think another, when you a lot many of the Bond movies are based off of Ian Fleming's novels, titles,
Mhm.
ideas. I think what shows a real creativity and shows how this franchise has grown. This movie was the first movie not to use was Craig's. This was Craig's first James Bond movie not to use an original Ian Fleming story.
Wow. Oh, I didn't realize that.
The other two were using Fleming's titles
That makes
at that
sense.
point.
Yeah,
So
that's
so
true.
you're not beholden to ideas and things like that. And so I like, even though I love seeing, oh, this is what it was based off, and things like that. I really like saying, okay, how creative can we get? Like, where
Yeah.
can we really take this series?
And plus it's like this movie almost feels like several different plots in one. I mean, it
Hmm.
all connects, but it's a very exciting film. It's not just like a boring, straightforward narrative. It's like, there's different pieces and they've got their
Hmm.
different arcs. And the explosion is one arc. When he gets shot and falls off the bridge, that's another one. Like, there's just a lot of really cool, pivotal moments in the film.
Oh yeah, but then they find, Bond seeing what happened, rising from the dead.
Yep.
It, what was it saying? Where the hell have you been, enjoying death?
Yeah.
And
He's
the
like, "You
fact that
killed me, so."
yeah, exactly. You didn't. I went away. I did what I needed to do. I knew what the assignment was. You didn't come after me. I didn't want to be found. But he at least recognizes duty and loyalty to see, I'm at least going to make sure what I'm going to need. But the fact that, again, time is interesting with this, because if it was even if it was, it's definitely seemed longer than just a month or two, even though I said it could just be a month or two. Just when he goes through that training to be recertified as an agent, he's very rusty. Like, so much so, like, you really haven't been doing. And yes, he was shot, but it's just like, if it was just a month or two, I wouldn't think he'd be that rusty.
I feel like he's,
You
like,
know,
traumatized, like PTSD too, like.
there's definitely that too, especially when he's holding the gun up like
Mhm.
that, just because. And that's what some people don't like about Daniel Craig's Bond, that he's not invincible. He's deep seated, but it's like, well, that's not reality.
It adds stakes too,
Yeah.
I don't like to watch movies where I don't feel like there's any danger at all. Bond gets hurt, he
Hmm.
gets shot, he gets shaken, and when you have all that, it just makes him overcoming that and him, rising from the dead, like you said, it just makes it even better because now we can sort of relate to him. We can feel the stakes. It reminds me of, like, Jackie Chan when in his fighting movies, he always gets real hurt and incorporates that. It's like I remember him saying in an interview he does that because then the audience believes it.
Hmm.
If he gets hurt,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is more real. I think the stuff that Bond goes through, it grounds him as a character. It makes all the movies seem a little bit more real that he's in.
Oh yeah, and again, it's the theme of this movie: feeling betrayed. How do
Hmm.
you deal with not just loss, but also feeling like you've been abandoned at that point? And when he goes through that, one of my favorite lines of the movie, it's the snarkiness of Bond and M's relationship back and forth. One, he says he was thinking, I'm gonna go back to my flat. He's like, oh yeah, we sold your stuff, you died. So
It
so
which
it's just
makes sense. I feel like if you have, spies on your call sheet, you should definitely burn all their stuff or something
yeah,
when they die, like.
everything's put in storage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I guess I got a hotel. It's like, well, you're bloody well not sleeping here. But when he goes down after all the tests and things like that, and he sits in, or before he does all the tests and sitting in M's new office, he sees the the bulldog on her death statue and says, "The whole office goes up in smoke, and that bloody thing survives." M's like, yeah, I'm not here for your interior decor. I love that
Yes,
very quick back and forth. And my dedication to this movie being one of my favorites, I have one of the bulldogs that was used on the set
that's
as
awesome.
from it, just because I luckily had a friend who had a connection here and there, and he says
That's
I can
incredible.
get
I want a picture of
uh,
that.
I will definitely. It is sitting in my office in my school, and I can really tell people who connect with it because not many pick up on it. They just think, oh, it's one of those like kind of dogs from Britain or something like that. It says, oh, it's so much more than that. When they say, is that from? I said, oh, it literally is from.
That's crazy. I
So
love
yeah,
that.
I'll send you a picture of it. But I just love that sequence. It always gives me a smile on my face. But it also that statue, that little bulldog was what was used as kind of like the rallying for during World War II because
Mhm.
Winston Churchill and things like that. So it has a special place in Britain's heart. But
Yeah, it's very
you,
British.
yes, very very British at that point. But I love it because it has all the little cracks on it. It's got the soot on it. They did a real good job with having that look like it's seen some rough times, but especially how it flash forward to the end of the movie. We're spoiling at that point. M wills that to James.
Yes, and yeah, mhm.
So, but so it keeps on coming back up. But this has been now it took 3 movies for us to finally meet our quartermaster,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
and him meeting and Ben Winshaw. He fits the age we're living in
Oh,
that,
yeah, he's like the tech bro version of Q.
yeah, exactly, because we had just gone from John Cleese, and prior to that, you know, what was it? He's the 4th actor to play Q.
Oh gosh,
So,
I'm not good at that, but I yeah.
but you're right. Like I think someone said it like the Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg combination.
Yes, and I love the exchange that they have when they meet about, what's better, old or new, and
Mhm.
the way the conversation sort of wraps up to where they really respect each other.
Yeah, exactly. I love the dialogue when they meet in the National Gallery. How he jokes saying about giving Bond an exploding pen. And Bond moans about the tools received. He's just getting a gun and a radio to fulfill the mission, and he just said we just don't do that anymore. But him giving him the Walter PPK 9 millimeter, is one of the most is considered one of the most popular and widely known Bond guns
Mm.
in the franchises. So it's nice to kind of see that. But I love how he saying it's coded to your palm print. It's more of a personal statement you make than a simple killing.
Yeah. Yeah, and he becomes so beloved also as it goes on.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like I know him toward, by the final film.
Yeah, I did love that we got, as he's going through this, and we still haven't met our villain at all.
Yeah, true.
We end up going into Asia and Singapore, and just that whole battle sequence, that fight sequence with the sniper, and how
Mhm.
he ends up figuring out, oh, I got to go to this casino in excuse me, Macau, and how it's another time for Moneypenny and him to work together, and what he ends up doing, and just Bond. But you can't go a Bond movie without being in a casino. It almost seems like, I don't know.
I love it, yeah. There's certain things that have to happen, and I look forward to them. All the locations,
Mhm.
and yeah, casinos are they're just fun. I don't know.
And I just love it. Like he's got the chip from the sniper that he's just killed, and just cashes it in, and ends up getting this huge suitcase full of money at that point.
Yeah.
And but how he meets that, one our bond girl, one of our bond girls, and how she's connected to Silva, but like how scared she is of
Yeah.
even arranging this.
Mhm.
And then we finally get to Javier Bardem's, Silva, finally meeting him, and man, I love him as an actor. He's actually the
Yes.
2nd Academy Award winner to play a major Bond villain, and
Really?
the first was Christopher Walken in A View to Kill.
Oh, wow.
So, um, he in whatever part he plays, it is so unique.
Yes.
Like, I just think, like, I go back to Old Country for No Men at that point, and he I no, excuse me, No Country for Old Men.
No,
Words
no
are tough
worries.
sometimes. Words are but what he brings to that part in comparison, like, yes, 2 completely different parts, but
But so
both villains,
intense. Yeah.
but so
So
intense, both
iconic.
villains,
Mhm.
and it is he owns that. I don't know, he just owns every time he's on screen, he owns the scene. He chews up the entire scene.
Yes, in such a convincing way. Like, it's hard to go big like that, and it can be
Mhm.
goofy, right? And
Yeah.
it's not. Javier has an intensity to him that every single part that he's in, you fully buy into it. I mean, I even loved him as Stilgar in Dune. Like,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I remember Stilgar in the book, and then seeing him in the movie, I was like, "Oh, this is such an interesting take on him," and he does it so well, and it's like you said, it's like whatever part he's in, he just goes 100%, and it's
Yeah.
unique and engaging, and yeah, he's one of my favorite, Bond villains.
And I saw this. I read this a little bit ago, and it makes sense. Like this, supposedly he's modeled after the Joker from The Dark Knight and
I could see
Colonel
that.
Hans Landa from Inglorious Bastards.
Oh, I could see that too. Yeah. I mean, his I think it was his idea to, like, bleach his hair and stuff. He just knew, he's like, "That's gonna look crazy on me."
I'm already gonna be nuts. Let's
Yeah.
do that because it's like, oh, this is not your normal haircut, but all right, let's go with it. But you, besides just being off, you're just like wondering what is his deal? Like, he's got
Yeah.
this beef with M, and you
Mhm.
kinda get the idea that, okay, you're a former agent at that point, but why do you have this hatred towards it? And, it's just he's trying to convince Bond saying, "Hey, yeah, she abandoned you too. So you should really kinda join my side because you you're like me." Like, he's trying to convince Bond that we're two sons that were abandoned by their mother.
He's figured out the psychology of the way that they're recruited and used,
Mhm.
and he and James Bond hasn't yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or he's accepted it and it doesn't bother him, you
Right,
know?
right, absolutely.
But you get the, again, the craziness of the whole thing, like, it was just like him even just going onto Bond's legs and saying, "Oh, we're going there, okay,
Mhm.
let's do that." And Bond, I like how Bond says, "There's a first time for everything."
I know, a controversial comment, I remember on the internet when he did
Yeah,
that.
some people say, "Oh, that makes Bond bisexual." It's like, sure, if it does, great,
Yeah,
I
I think, if he is, it just doesn't matter, but it
yeah,
does feel like the film was challenging all kinds of
but
things about
but
Bond,
then
and that makes it kinda fun. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like, well, if it's not, it's Bond being cheeky because
Yeah, which
that's
he
who
is
Bond
always.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's just playing along, but then, you know, they Silva is trying to basically, test Bond and saying, "Hey, she put you out in the field and you weren't ready. So here's a gun. I want you to shoot the the shot glass off of her head." And we know we can't do it.
Mhm.
He but when it comes down to it, that's not what Bond does. And this Bond is our blunt instrument that, and he shows it too. Like after Silva kills her, and he just basically goes full on Bond and starts shooting all the people left and right. And that's what he can do best. You're
Mhm.
not asking him to do a precision sniper kill because
Oh,
that's not
that's a
what he
good point.
does. And so trying to make him do it, yeah, if he was at if he didn't have what happened to him prior to that, yeah, he probably could have done it much easier, but that's not where Bond is the best.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, I felt like, I mean, I guess we kind of knew it was gonna happen, but still, when Silva shoots her, uh,
Oh yeah, none boom, done.
you're like, "Man, this guy is so bad." Like, just
Mhm.
unnecessarily bad.
But what did you think, like, when how quickly he was captured? It's like, like, okay, we're, like, halfway through the movie,
Well,
something's
this is
gonna
another
happen.
Joker-ish move, is to be captured.
Mhm.
and be inside the main place.
And that was
Should have been
just
a clue for us.
it yeah, and especially when you reveal, like, his whole story when he's
Yeah.
captured, it's like, I you know, I was given the cyanide pill, and it didn't work, effective, didn't totally kill me,
Oh,
so instead, like, burned, and he takes out like, I thought they were gonna go like, "Oh, this is their version of Jaws." No, it's just it's just
that
his
part made me nauseous the first time I saw it.
oh,
It's so effective.
especially, like, when you see, oh my gosh, it affected his eye because his eye's literally popping out when he removes
Yeah.
the thing, and it's like, man, bravo to the makeup and CG
Yes.
department because that was like you said, it wa I can understand how it was nauseating.
And M, I feel like throughout the film, she made that comment earlier to James Bond, "Well, he can't stay here."
Mhm.
Javier makes the jokes about her being a mom that abandons him, and then this moment happens, and I think we finally see that mask that M has on slip a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
When
because
she sees yeah, go ahead, sorry.
go no, go for it, go for it.
When she sees how disfigured he is, and he says, "Look what you did, look at your work."
Mhm.
She the whole movie, she's convincing herself and everybody else that she always made the right call, and she acts like all we gotta do is capture Silva, I don't care. But in that moment, it's like we can tell she did care, and she did have
Yeah.
to make a call, but it wasn't as easy for her as he thinks it was.
Yeah, 'cause he thinks, as we see when she says, "Just take the bloody shot," at that point, you hear it, but when he says, "Agent down," you see that reaction of Am
True.
saying, "Oh god, what did I just do?"
Yeah, it's like she has to make these calls, but she doesn't enjoy them at all,
Mhm.
but she
Yeah,
has
but,
to put on a brave face.
yeah, that's what she's put in charge of,
Yeah,
this is what she's expecting to do, and but when she's forced to really confront a screw up at that point in the sense of, like, he didn't die.
yeah,
That was I don't know if Silva would have it sounded like he would have accepted the fact, but the fact that it didn't work and it didn't kill him is just like that made it 10 times worse. It was already adding insult to injury.
yeah, yeah.
So, but you're right. I mean, going back to like just like in the Dark Knight, the
Yes.
Joker wanted to be captured. Silva wanted to be captured because again, they're trying to decipher all like the encryption in the drive, and what they really ended up doing is like, oh, he's put in a virus in here to free him and to cripple their new underground headquarters.
Yeah, he's like a tech genius as well, and
Hmm.
Q's arrogance kinda backfires here a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, like he says, "Oh, I found this and found this." And, darn it.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh," and when he's, like, frantically unplugging,
Hmm.
the computer, just I don't know, it gave me weird flashbacks about, like, when you get, like, a back in the day when you get a virus and you're, like, trying to turn the computer off really fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially the chase sequence that Bond does, trying to find Silva, going through the train tunnels, going into the train station, chasing
Mhm.
him down to where M is giving uh, testimony to basically either get fired or to finally save her job. Because I mean, Mallory, like you said, we don't know if we can trust Mallory or not. And I like it how Eve tells him back in Singapore, it's like, yeah, he's not exactly who you think he is. And Bond already knows like his background. Like he's not just a normal bureaucrat. He has served. He has
Yeah,
some background in it. But it's almost in the sense of when we don't trust him because he's basically trying to tell M, you need to face facts. You need to retire. You're not going to weather this time. And it's like, well, why are you trying to force her out? It's almost like, but as you get to see him, it's like he's trying to help her save face before she has to be blamed for this.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
And but you see exactly like as they're going through the courtroom sequence that all the questioning she's having to deal with. Judy
Yeah.
Dench is being Judy Dench, but she sells it so well. It's like, oh, I don't care what they're going to ask me. I'm going to tell them how it is.
Yeah, and she has a really good, like, speech and quote
Hmm.
in this scene. And she's ahead of the curve more than they think. There's sort of a theme in this movie about Bond being too old, her being too old. We need young people in here. But M, she does have a lot of insight into the world of
Hmm.
today, and I like how she says it's not like it used to be. We had to change our strategy because things have just changed, and you can tell
Hmm.
that the whole rest of the council doesn't really understand that yet. You know?
Yeah, and it's more. This is going to be much more apparent in Spectre and in
Yeah.
No Time to Die.
True. True. True.
Very
True.
apparent. And as Mallory proving, he takes basically a bullet to save M.
Yeah,
And Silva goes to ground at that point, but you know he Bond is trying to get uh M out of there and ends up trying to go to the only place that he knows, but also Q is helping him hide his breadcrumbs, leave breadcrumbs, but also give him a leg up of getting ready for wherever they're going. But
mhm.
Mallory also signs off on it, so it's like we're getting more and more like Mallory's not a bad guy.
Exactly. Yeah, the bullet and then this, their visual cues like, okay, I don't have to focus on him anymore.
Like he's one of these people like, okay, maybe we can, as we go back and look at what he was trying to do, he's doing what he thinks is best in order
Exactly.
to salvage a really awful situation.
Mhm.
But we get, as going back to his psychological evaluation, the word Skyfall, roll credits at that point we've already heard is like he just walks away, absolutely walks away when he hears that saying done from the psychological evaluation.
Yeah.
But then we come to see the fact that where they go, that is a child at home. We
It's
don't get that. We don't get that from Bond. We don't get that kind of
it
background of who
felt
he is
very
and what he's been.
felt very, like, Rosebud-ish, right? A
Yeah.
little bit. But, yeah, it's like, I was very excited when we see his home, and you
Hmm.
realize that. You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, man, we're in new territory." Once again, another big arc in the movie,
Hmm.
we're reaching a different point in the film. It's like, "Oh, this feels like another, like, almost like mini movie."
Yeah. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And so, they go to the house and we see the role played by Albert Finney in his last on screen performance,
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
playing Kincaid. It was originally written for Sir Sean Connery in mind.
Oh.
They had tossed around the idea of making it a surprise cameo, but Sam Mendes told the Huffington Post that there was definite discussion of Connery playing Kincaid very early on, he said, but the reason that he nixed it and they decided to nix it was that it takes you out of the movie. Connery is Bond, and he's not going to come back to just do another character. It's like he's been there, so it would be a brief flirtation that it just wasn't going to happen. It was a nice idea, and I agree. I think that really would take what's going on in the movie away right then and there. Very cool, but it's like, oh, we're looking at Sean Connery as Bond, old Bond.
Yeah, and I think this part of the movie already gets critiqued enough. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Honest trailer where they say it's like Home
Oh,
Alone.
honest trailers.
I
Let's nitpick
know,
everything.
I know, but when they compare it to Home Alone, I have to laugh. I love this movie, but
It's
that made
true.
me
It's
laugh really hard. And I had other friends that said the same thing, like, this part ruins it for them. I love it. I see what they're saying. I love it. But I think if it was Sean Connery, it'd be even more, you know,
yeah.
it breaks the fourth wall. It's not a good idea. I agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. I until you said it, it's like, yeah, you're right. It does very get Home Alone vibes with all the booby traps and things like that. But it's
That
like
made me laugh.
it's like they're trying to drag him into a trap. So what else is it supposed to do? I just love it saying,
Exactly, yeah.
"Oh, my father's got all these guns. Oh, they just sold them to collector. Okay, so I've got this gun and this gun. What else do we have?"
Yeah, they've gotta get scrappy, it's more fun to watch if they do that. You gotta involve Judi Dench somehow, she's predominantly been behind a desk, but we see her here actively helping.
Hmm.
The odds are against them. I think it's you're meant to feel like they're vulnerable, so I get why they did it. But
Yeah.
that's a classic example of me really liking something,
Hmm.
respecting it, but still being able to giggle at a joke and not, you know, it not hurt my feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can know that, and I could watch Skyfall again, knowing it's like a Home Alone sequence. Like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Kevin
you know, I
McAllister
can,
2.0, yeah.
exactly. But this actually marks the first time the F word is you can actually hear it in a Bond movie
Really? I bet that
when
was, like,
when
controversial for some, like,
when M
Patrick.
exclaimed when M is sitting there saying, I really f this up." It's like
Especially coming from her, yeah, it's like, "What?" Yeah.
yeah, no argument there.
No, things are pretty effed.
But it's definitely the whole. I mean, again, you always get the big battle sequence in, and we kind of expect it. And this is, again, a last stand. And interesting enough, like during that whole sequence when I love all the different booby traps, things like that, and what they're able to hold ground. It did bring it. tear to my eye a little bit, being as big of a Bond fan, seeing the Aston Martin go up in smoke. That hurt a bit.
Yeah. Ugh.
Um,
I'm sure it
but
really hurts Nick too, he loves the
yeah,
car.
it's but
Well
I
cars.
did like read the story recently that the the downdraft from the helicopter in the sequence was so powerful it actually blew the false teeth out of Javier's mouth.
Dang.
So I mean, I could only imagine the sound editing at that point must have
Sure.
been a nightmare. Oh, I finally found my notes on it. Yeah, when unfortunately M dies during
Right.
this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a tough
from
scene.
tough scene on Her Majesty's Secret Service. That's the first time he cries.
Ah.
That's I had part of it. Just took mind fart at that point.
Yeah, and,
So
it's weird saying all this stuff now because, without saying spoilers, there's movies after this that do
mhm.
some similar things, but up until this point is what we're talking about.
so it but it brought her arc. I mean, she had been there since you know Goldeneye. You
Yeah,
know, and so to have her be here for two. Again, my introduction with Bond was Goldeneye.
yeah,
And that started my whole love of Bond. So
probably
seeing
was mine too, yeah.
seeing M make this kind of journey and her, get killed in action. I said like I like the arc she had. Like she has seen a lot of different like two different Bonds, but also very different sequences. And the fact that she goes out like this is just it's fitting.
And it's their connection at the end, she had made
Hmm.
comments earlier that orphans make the best recruits, and she sounded so cold when she said it, but as the movie wears on, we see that it really gets to her, especially when the
Hmm.
groundskeeper guy is like, he says that his parents died and he didn't come out for 2 days. Again, another Batman-ish thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then he comes out a man, and you can tell it hurts her in a way. It's like, gosh, he lost all his innocence.
Mhm. I've capitalized on this man's
Yeah.
tragedy.
And there's a weird mom and dad thing even with him trying to protect them in that house. And then she dies. Um Yeah, it's just I rewound what she says at the end about, she did one thing right,
Yeah.
a couple times when I was watching it.
Mhm. No, I love that, and especially when we go to the end, and that I love. If I could just have picture frame of screenshot and just hang it of him standing at the top of MI6, looking
Yeah,
out, and just oh god, that one scene is just so perfectly shot. That is probably one of the best shots of Craig's franchise.
I agree.
And like I said, him getting the 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 dog at the end was just a nice like final thing, and he does
Yeah.
make an appearance in Spectre as well. But seeing him come down and you know seeing Eve's new role and seeing Mallory become the new M. I mean, I think at that point we kind of saw the writing on the wall that Ray Fiennes was going to be the new M,
Yes,
and it fits. It
it
really
fits
does fit.
really well because I mean, we've seen that he tried to take a bullet from her. He's not trying to take her job. He's somberly taking that torch.
Yeah, and
And yeah.
especially how he ends it saying, "Are you ready to get back to work?"
Yep, and then
So,
he's like, "Yeah," and you're just like, "Bond's back, baby!" Like, it's such an uplifting ending
oh
despite
yeah,
what just happened.
and it's the third consecutive James Bond movie that ends with him alone, when all the other ones seem to always end with Bond with the Bond girl.
True, true. One little thing I was gonna say, I'm not trying to be too negative, so I like Spectre, and
Hmm.
I love Christoph Waltz, like, come on, he's awesome. But I do kind of like the Bond villain in this one a little bit more. I mean, there's some similarities with, like feeling betrayed and like
Yeah.
being in prison at one point and teasing Bond and all that. Christoph Waltz, his character, Blofeld, feels a little bit more cartoonish, like a little bit bigger and grander.
Hmm.
And I like the darker, unhinged, Joker-esque version that Javier is. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
give that a quick comment. Again, I love Christoph Waltz. Don't send me hate mail. That's just my opinion.
No, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just because, again, some of the best. It's interesting just because a lot of our Bond villains are mustache twirly over the top ones.
Sure, and you love
And,
that about them.
yeah,
Like, that's
and that's
great.
what we expect. Like, people say, "Oh, Bond movies all the same," but say, okay, so but there's nothing, but that's not saying like there's nothing wrong with enjoying that because that's what we
Yeah,
expect.
we wanna
You
see
know?
expensive cars, different locations all over the
Yeah,
world, expensive clothes, pretty people. Like, there's some key elements that make it a Bond film, and
yeah.
those are fun elements to play with and, interpret in different ways.
hmm and even though, as we said before, this out of the five movies, which this is the most amount of the longest span of time he's done Bond at that point compared to the others. For the most part, outside of this movie, this has been a huge arc of a story from where he goes to Casino Royale to No Time to Die, and it's very interesting to just kind of see a story continue on throughout this path.
Yeah.
So, but it's like I said, I might even watch it in the next couple of weeks just because I love this movie so much, and it captures everything that I really have enjoyed about Daniel Craig's portrayal of Bond.
Well, dang, I don't even have to ask you that question then. You just summarized why you've seen it. I have to chime in and say I 100% agree. There are certain things that I like, hashtag not hashtag my bond. Um, I I like the way that Daniel Craig has portrayed him. I enjoy every single film that he's been Bond in. Even
hmm
if I don't like it as much, I think, for me, it's probably this movie and Casino Royale are kind of, at the top, and then Quantum of Solace and No Time to Die are a little towards the bottom. Spectre's in the middle for me. But you know what? There's not a bad Bond film.
Yeah,
For as much as I put something on the bottom, I still enjoy it, So
yeah.
I love all of them, but this one really captures my favorite parts about him, I think.
It's just it's a different portrayal. Like we say, like there's certain things we expect out of a Bond movie, but the way he has portrayed this character has given us something a different Bond to look at. So for when they start next year casting and searching for their new Bond, it,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that it's what direction you want to go in.
Yeah. Do you feel like it'll be lighter or darker?
I I don't know if it's the Bond represents the age we live in. And
Agreed.
so you look at starting with Sean Connery in the swinging 60s and things like that as he leads into Roger Moore of kind of a different kind of look in the 70s where
Mhm.
Timothy Dalton, who I think is one of the most underrated Bonds, you know, he's more dark and gritty
True.
than
Yeah.
in those just two movies at that point. And Pierce Brosnan gives us kind of the going back to the swagger and the fun,
Yeah, those
in that
movies
sense.
were really, big.
Don't even get started on on Die Another Day.
Oh my gosh, when that song starts playing in my head and I'm like, "No." I
There's a
loved that
great
song when it came out because I was really young, but as I get older, I'm like, "That song's kind of annoying." But,
I can't remember the name of the documentary. I was looking at all the Bonds, and Pierce Brosnan goes on when he's talking about Die Another Day. I want to say he's half joking, but I also want to say he's also telling the truth when he says, "Oh, we were so drunk on that set so many different times." I was like, "Good," because that makes so much sense now about that how that movie goes. Sorry if you like it,
Yeah, doesn't it
but
involve,
but
like, giant diamonds or giant
yes,
ice? I can't
yep,
yeah,
hmm
I
it's
think I
it's it's
blocked some of it
crazy,
out.
but again, each one of those bonds represents something different.
For
So
sure.
if we are leading towards, looking at the age and the world we live in,
Mhm.
what is the spy for post Daniel Craig?
Yeah, is he gonna be like a superhero or, like, we'll see I
I-
guess we'll see.
Is it going to be more like I know Q has to be certain, and I hope they do continue using this Q. I
I
really, really
agree.
do.
I mean,
I don't
he's
think
young, youngish, and so I feel like he could do it for a long time.
there's precedent for Q's and M's continuing
True,
onwards
true,
through
true.
different franchises. So same thing with Ray Fiennes.
Mhm.
I think he can continue, but without getting into too many spoilers for No Time to Die. But
Yeah, I feel
but
like they did him dirty a little bit, but well,
yeah,
anyway.
But again, and people say, "Oh, who's your fan cast?" And it's like, I don't like doing
I
that,
agree.
and this
I'm
is
not good at that anyway.
in this case, I don't wanna do that because when I say it's not gonna be a name, I think that if anything has seen from what the Broccoli's have done with holding on to this
Mm.
franchise, Daniel Craig wasn't a household name.
True, true, true.
Pierce Brosnan wasn't as he was a name, but more people knew him from Remington Steele,
Mhm.
which cost him the first time going to Bond, because that's how it went to Timothy Dalton. He was
Ah,
given Bond, and he thought Remington Steele was canceled, and they re-upped it, and he had to turn down Bond.
wow.
And so so how many times you get offered Bond twice, and you get that second chance?
You're
So
only offered Bond twice.
there you go. You only offered Bond. There you go. Hey, I see what you did there. But so I don't. My only prediction is it's not going to be a household name, or
Okay.
it's not as big of a household name.
I agree, and I don't wanna get into, like, all the complicated who should it be either, because it's like, I kinda just wanna see what happens, you know?
Hmm.
And there's been so many that it's like, I'm pretty open to what their vision is. The other question I was gonna have for you is, like, here's a weird fact. When this movie came out, it didn't do the newest one, it didn't do that great. We're in a different world than where we're in 2012
Hmm.
for so many reasons, but also because I feel like there's been so much time in between some of the Bond films that there's like a generation of kids, I say kids, but probably Zennials, that do not
Oh,
care
youngins.
about Bond. Like when I did my Kingsman episode, um, my guest was he's younger than me, and he was just like, "Oh, I've never seen any of the Bond films. I never watched, like
Hmm.
He's like, Austin Powers is like the closest thing I understand to like what spy movies are." And I was like, "Whoa!" Just being a little bit older, our parents really introduced all this spy stuff to us, and it was like
It's true.
I thought Bond was just, he was like for everybody, like Superman. He doesn't go away, but he kind of has a little bit. So what would you say to, like, a newer fan? Like, how do you pitch Bond in general, and how do you pitch this film to them?
Well, in pitching this kind of film, as I said, it's one of those things that doesn't help if you see the previous two. It does, but it's not necessary.
Very
So
true.
you're looking at the idea of, okay, you've got a spy for British. If we want to get really thing, British MI6, so their version of CIA,
Sure.
and what happens when the sins of the agency's past come back and haunt them, including in looking at the idea of abandonment and understanding what loyalty really is, what it carries.
Yeah. It's like in any, like, sort of cop detective film, which, I mean,
Hmm.
it's not just like that, but it's kinda like that where it's like, "I'm turning in my badge." You know? You've gotta have
Yeah.
those kind of moments, those kind of
Hmm.
turns, but yeah, I think, whether you've seen Bond or not, I agree. I think this one kind of stands on its own, and I think that it's got a lot of really interesting, fresh new elements to it that maybe
Hmm.
some if the older 60s stuff doesn't appeal to you, I think this one might, you know?
Oh yeah, and even though I love the Bond franchise, I've seen all the movies and I enjoy them. A lot of them do not hold up. Call
I
me,
know.
I'm so again, I am a Bond fan,
Same.
up and down, but I
I'm careful who I
I
suggest some of them to.
yes, exactly. I'm not gonna say you have to watch them all. I like you said, I can read my audience and know which ones will work with some people and which ones will not land.
Yeah, and I can't blame them for that. And so, yeah, I think this one's, a little bit easier for people if they do
Hmm.
have some of those issues. I don't think they're present. And I just think it's really good. And maybe it'll be your introduction into the Bond franchise, and you can see why we some of us love it so much.
Yeah, it is a very good balance between action beats, character development,
Mhm.
some slow times,
Yeah.
action. I mean, it has a very, very good balance. So, I mean, this is one I could easily put in most interested parties' hands and not regret giving them that choice.
100%. Well, Chris, this has been really fun to talk about. I absolutely love this movie. And, so glad that you chose it. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Balga, and my two shows you can follow on Twitter: World's Finest True Believers at Finest Believers, and Marvel Alliance at Marvel A Podcast. Both of those shows are on the Geek Ultimate Alliance network. So just in your podcatcher choice, to search Geek Ultimate Alliance.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate having you on. And I've got to come up with a comic book eventually to come back on.
Yes, we got to get you back on. Thanks for having me on again.